Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 29th day of April 2025, and in studio I have Robert Mbui, Member of Parliament for Kathiani constituency. He is the Deputy Minority Leader at the National Assembly. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Morning, Sam. Morning, viewers.
Titus Mahanu is an advocate of the High Court. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam.
Wilson Sossion, former nominated Member of Parliament. Good morning.
Good morning, and former SG NAT.
Yes, that's for sure. I do not dispute that. And also former chairperson of NAT, isn't it?
Yes.
Great. So we're here to talk about different matters, but quickly, just remind you that Peter Kaluma from Homa Bay Town is expected. As soon as he joins us, will be joining the panel. Now, the papers, A Short-Lived Truce is the headline story on the Daily Nation. That last December, President Ruto made a surprise visit to the rural residence of his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta, in Ishaweri, after 2 years of hostility, including a raid by security agents on the home of the son of the country's fourth president. The meeting between the two allies turned force ignored the thawing of relations, but the ceasefire seems to have collapsed, with allies of the president recently going after Mr. Kenyatta hammer in tongs following his statements egging on the youth to demand accountability from the government. On the front page of the Standard, killers in uniform in clear violation of the constitutional right to life and freedom to protest. The police, working with elements of the Kenya Defence Forces, killed innocent youths during last year's Gen Z anti-tax protests, despite parliamentary committee ordering the police oversight body, IPOA, to investigate the deaths and make its findings public. The state agency has failed to do so. Only the media remains a defender of the public by revealing these deadly transgressions and identities of the killers. And I just want us to quickly make comments to that a film by the BBC revealing some of the images of people believed to have either given orders to shoot or pull the trigger, ending the lives of young people. And you're talking about more than 60 young lives recorded by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. And so far, Wakili Mahanu, we haven't seen much progress. IPOA released a statement saying that they're waiting. They have finalized on 22 cases. They're waiting for directions from the ODPP. Some, very few matters are in court. Others are still in the investigation process. Shall we ever see justice as we inch closer to 2 years since those protests?
Now, thank you, Sam. The issue of extrajudicial killings, and it's a good thing that yesterday BBC was able to unravel the real situation. And these are things that Kenyans have been speaking about. Of course, right now the arrangement that we have in government is that the opposition and the government are now together, and they said that some of the conditions that they gave the government is that individuals who are responsible for the killing of the young people during the last year's protests are going to be prosecuted and processed through the court process. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. And I'm not surprised when we see that report from BBC, because I think many Kenyans have been waiting to see justice being delivered by the government, which, of course, you'll remember that the government itself has promised, not once but on several occasions, that it's going to ensure that those who are responsible for the lost lives are going to be prosecuted. So for me, I do not expect, there is a lot of non-commitment from the part of the government, and I do not expect any justice to come from the side of government. What needs to be done is that concerned and parties and stakeholders, for example, civil societies, Law Society of Kenya, they need to mount up pressure and possibly file up these cases and references in court so that we have these individuals whom we have seen in the full glare of the cameras executing these young people. We have seen the cases of Baby Pendo. The responsible individuals are being prosecuted. So justice can only come if we have pressure mounting from the stakeholders and civil society and LSK. But on the part of the government, I do not think they have that commitment.
You know, that's interesting because when we have asked these questions to the former Interior Minister, now Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, when we have asked former Defense Cabinet Secretary, now Health, that is Aden Duale, they have always pushed the question and said, as the relevant department. For Aden Duale said that this was an internal operation. The KDF was only coming in to support. The Interior Minister said he's not a police investigator. He has to wait on the authorities, in this case IPOA. And now you're saying that we do not expect any action to be taken. Yet there are state agencies that have been assigned that role by constitution and different laws. Then why do we have them?
Now, you know, that is the problem with our society today and the government as by extension. We have a constitution and the laws, but many a times you will see that the government is very comfortable when orders or processes that follow the law favor them. They will go an extra mile in ensuring that, and you'll see statements being issued from government agencies that citizens have a responsibility to respect the law. Citizens have to conform with the law. But many a times we have seen the same government violating orders or processes of the court that have been dictated by the law. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason why I'm saying that I expect very little from the government is that right up to this moment, and I was watching that documentary, and the response that they gave is that they tried to give an opportunity to the government to participate in the production of the documentary. But the reports that are coming from the police and the KDF, more specifically the police, is that the police cannot investigate itself. That is what the documentary says. Yeah. That they tried reaching out to the police, but the police said they cannot investigate themselves. Yet the police has internal mechanisms of disciplining members of their forces who have violated the law. We have IPOA. But
IPOA has said that the police has been uncooperative.
I will not be surprised. The police, if they have the guts to issue the statement that they cannot investigate themselves, I do not expect anything reasonable to come out of them. And it's for the reason. Yep. They know that they are guilty as charged, and there is no way of getting out of it. So they know already that they have these atrocities have been committed. So there is even no point of investigating. Because at the tail end, if they investigate, the verdict will be that they violated the law. And there was a wanton and reckless execution of these young people.
Mheshimiwa Mboi, now, nearly 10 months later, has Parliament even attempted to find answers to these questions?
Let me just say that you've started off on the wrong footing, because Parliament has been neutered, you are aware. I think there would be a Kenyan, I don't think there's any Kenyan who doesn't know the situation we are in as a country, because Parliament is controlled by the executive. I mean, that's common knowledge. Yeah. But allow me to first condemn, in the strongest terms possible, those individuals that have decided to go against our constitutional rights, right to information, right to speech, and even right to picketing. And those that have already issued statements against the media because of the expose by BBC. I mean, to hear leaders argue that this should stop being aired in Kenya, this documentary, because it exposes the nation, I think that's really unfortunate and unacceptable. Because as a country, we should have gone beyond that level. The real thing is that things did happen. Children were killed. Our children were killed. They were killed for no good reason. And therefore, this has to be exposed so that we can be sure that this problem doesn't go on. Now, Sam, on the matter of the killing of Gen Zs, it is a criminal offense. And the police, the DCI, the DPP, are basically supposed to investigate every crime. Now, when you talk about the slow movement of the investigation, it surprises me because BBC reporters have no access to the information that Kenyan government and the police have. But they were able to come up with a report, even to show individuals that were involved in the killings. But the reality is that Kenyan police know who killed the Gen Zs, because most of those that were shot, the bullets can be traced back to the gun that was fired. And the gun that was fired can be traced back to the individual that was handed over that gun that morning. So this information is clearly in the hands of the police. What they are doing is actually trying to block justice from prevailing. And that is why I'm saying The expose was a good thing.
Yep.
Media must continue talking about these things so that these things can be brought out to the open. Now, IPOA, yes, does exist, and the purpose of IPOA is obviously to assist whenever there is issues to do with the police.
Yeah.
But for me, I look at it from this perspective, that IPOA probably would need to deal with the issues of discipline of police officers. We are talking about a criminal offense. This is a responsibility of DCI and his team. They should investigate, they should prosecute, DPP should send those people to court and let let justice prevail. It is unfortunate that as a country, we are talking about this thing so many months later. We are going to another, actually we are just about to finish a year, because in June we'll have done a year since that happened. And it is clear that the government is hell-bent on making sure that nothing happens and these things are not sorted out.
And that's why I asked the question. You say it's the wrong footing, but I'm deliberate in asking the question because the National Assembly is, should I say, body corporate, but at the same time, members of Parliament acted individually. Has there been any effort by a single member of Parliament, including yourself, to find closure to these matters?
One of the things, let's first agree what is the responsibility of Parliament. It is not to investigate criminal offences. That is the work of the police.
Sure.
So when it comes to what we can do is ask why the police are too slow. But you've already had the answers. They've already given answers and said we don't investigate ourselves. That's already, it's an answer that has come out in this set. I've heard you mention that today. So already the police have given answers.
But Parliament can demand action.
We can demand answers, yes. But the reality is that, in my opinion, okay, let's lift the veil on this issue. This was a matter that was concerning Parliament. This was a problem that was caused by the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. Because when the young people came out and said, do not continue the debate on this finance bill, and we want you to shoot it down, Parliament in its wisdom decided to go against the wishes of the youth. And voted in support of a finance bill that was highly punitive. That is where the problem starts. And that is why Parliament would be very quiet about this thing. Because the problem is Parliament.
Including you, who was opposed to the bill.
I am not part of the quiet ones. But Sam, there are processes in the House. And there are leadership. There is leadership in the House. And it is not easy for an individual member to be able to prosecute whatever they want on the floor of the House without the powers that be to...
You can't raise a statement.
Sorry?
You can't raise a statement asking a question
I think that's already been done. That's already been done.
And have there been answers?
I think we are waiting for answers. That's already been done. There's been a question on the matter of what happened and what is the process, and what is the progress. I think that question is already there.
Okay.
Soon, Sam, will have the CS for Interior answering those questions.
Okay. Never mind that he...
But you see, my negativity...
He was at transport at the time of these events.
My negativity is that what will happen, it will be a talk shop. He will come and give answers. They'll be half-baked. And then that will be the end of that story. That's why I am very concerned that the criminal justice system, which doesn't include Parliament for your information, should just do its job. Sure. Let us get these people prosecuted. Let us have some people serve jail terms so that we can know at least that, in Kenya, the law is being respected.
You're spot on, that Parliament is not part of the investigative bodies, but it represents the people. And Gen Zs are people. Mheshimiwa Sosion, when you hear that Kenya Defence Forces actually might have pulled the trigger to kill some of the Gen Z protesters, what does this say about a country that has very clear roles of different security organs?
By the time the Kenya Defence Forces pulls the trigger, I'm sure that must be an escalation of conflicts towards levels of mutiny or something of the sort. I think that would be because the Kenya Defence Forces cannot step in where where threats have not escalated to that level. But looking at the whole of this scenario and everything that has gone on, and right now, we don't seem to be sure of who should have done what and who should do what. Because this is a country and we must ensure that there is constitutional order and the rule of law. somebody should be able to tell us, in normal protestations around Parliament, do you break the fence? And when the fence was pulled down and Parliament was invaded, where was the police? You know, this brings a lot of questions around the police. How were the protesters allowed to pull down a fence in the full glare of the police, and with so many police officers in the country, well-trained, well-equipped? Why were the protesters not controlled properly so that they could protest within the precincts, within the areas that they're supposed to? The moment you allow breakage into very sensitive institutions, then you are creating a confrontation and a reason even to kill, which would be very difficult to explain, to account.
Even though some of those people shot were actually outside Parliament, Mheshimiwa. They were not.
Whether they were shot inside and outside Parliament, but we agree this was an extraordinary occurrence, and therefore Parliament, I think, should have taken time to debate on all this going into the future, because Kenyans will be demonstrating. Some have led demonstrations to that Parliament in the past, and Kenyans are not going to stop demonstrating. So that brings in the question, how were these protests supposed to be controlled properly and managed by the police in an orderly manner? That's a big question, because the right to protest is provided for in the, Constitution, and therefore
my question
Parliament cannot run away.
Is that you, Mheshimiwa Sossion, is that you excusing killing?
No, it's not an excuse to kill. To pull a trigger to kill when there is no reason is not right.
Have you watched the documentary?
That is fundamentally, I've watched the documentary. I keep watching.
And you can see police kneeling to aim.
All of us will keep to aim. Of course, the police will, the guns and whatever are given to the police, but they're supposed to use
aiming at a protester who is outside Parliament.
We have seen all that. All of us have seen. And that brings me to question. We have a constitution. We have IPOA.
Yeah.
Police Oversight Authority, and it is independent. I am sure they have seen these films. I am sure they should be able to generate a report and convince and take action on the police if unreasonable force was used, as shall be determined. I am sure Parliament will also take time out. Let's not talk of Parliament being captured. Parliament is not captured. Every member of Parliament is elected freely and independently by the people of Kenya. And Parliament is independent from the executive. And it is Parliament.
Let me ask you this, Mheshimiwa Sossion. So IPOA will take care of its independent policing oversight authority. What about KDF? Because there's a face of a man believed to be from the KDF. What happens?
It is common knowledge that KDF was deployed to Parliament. And to assist the police in quelling the riots. And it was done via Gazette notice. It is not. So really,
after the fact?
That is a fact.
After the fact. The gazettement was after the fact.
Whichever.
Not whichever.
KDF.
There's a KDF officer who is captured as having killed one of the protesters. What should happen? Because IPOA cannot investigate KDF, can it?
Of course, definitely you can't. IPOA cannot investigate.
So how does that
KDF.
family get justice?
IPOA will have jurisdiction over the police, but they don't have jurisdiction over the KDF.
So what happens?
That's a fact.
That's what I'm asking. So what should happen?
Tell me who will investigate KDF. And by the time KDF come in, that is an extraordinary situation that borders on mutiny. And you see, when you overturn Parliament, when you break into Parliament, when you destroy and disagree, that is mutiny. Or the Supreme Court. That's a fact.
Wakili,
so by the time, the KDF are deployed, then you should know it indeed is a serious matter.
So Eric deserved to die?
No Kenyan deserved to die. I cannot qualify the killing of any Kenyan.
You're excusing it. Wakili,
and the circumstances that prevailed, of course, I may not account as an individual citizen.
Wakili, help us here, because I don't know any law that guides on how a civilian authority can investigate a Kenya Defence Force or Kenya KDF officer. What should happen in this case?
Now, the law that provides guidance on any violations, be it committed by a civilian, members of our disciplined forces, above all is the Constitution. And the Constitution has demarcated very clearly that any offense committed within the territory of Kenya can be investigated through the powers that have been given to the DPP and the DCI. So you look at those footages and you can see clearly that, first of all, when these shots were being fired to these protesters, they were literally walking away from Parliament. At that point, at that particular point, there was no imminent threat that will warrant this KDF officer from firing the shots. You can see he shot and fired these protesters from behind. So you can't really say that these people were acting in a manner that was a threat to him to warrant him to use the firearm. Most importantly, these protesters were not armed. So there was no reason at all. And we have seen globally how officers try to restrain protesters and how to manage protests. If protesters are not armed, they are not violent, there is no reason whatsoever to use a firearm. Most importantly, what we saw during the Gen Z protest, that was not a mutiny. Those were Kenyans who were tired about the taxes that had been put on them by this regime. So you can't say that it is a mutiny. Because if it was a mutiny as such, then the president would not have agreed and, withdrawn that bill, being the main reason. But most importantly, Sam, that KDF officer is subject to the Constitution of Kenya. The DCI can investigate him and have him prosecuted, because what he did is not in line with the objectives and the purpose of KDF. KDF did not send him to shoot at those protesters who are not armed at that particular point.
Interesting. And of course, we were hoping that Peter Kaluma would join us this morning because you understand he said some few things that Robert Mbui referenced earlier on, and it was to the effect that the documentary by BBC, he said, is twisted, partial, reckless, and intended to incite chaos in Kenya. The relevant agencies of the government of Kenya must act fast to withdraw BBC license in Kenya. He's not here to really substantiate what exactly he means, because this does not sound like...
I think there's a reason why he's not here, because he knows clearly that last year during the protests, he issued also another statement saying that if any of his child does not attend the protest, then he's going to demand for a DNA. So, Kaluma is a guy who changes based on convenience.
Let's not discuss
I know he's not here, but we are responding to his statement. The statement was reckless. That's why I am finding it a bit unrestrained to respond to it.
Okay, so please, Peter Kaluma, pick our calls. You committed to attending the show this morning. You're not here. We're taking a short break here. When we come back, we'll be talking about the questions of IEBC to be reconstituted soon, but at the same time, the future of NG-CDF, because members of parliament have been at it, saying that it is here to stay.